Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and on this episode, we're going to be getting to know the opponent. That opponent will be the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers will be playing against the AFC South, as well as, of course, the rest of the NFC North. We're going to get to those teams, but today we're going to focus on the Green Bay Packers, and I brought in someone that knows just a little bit about the Green Bay Packers. You know, the Pack a Day podcast, Technical Foul podcast. Now, we ain't gonna hold it against her that she does a Locked On Bucks podcast, you know, and I'm a Bulls fan. But we ain't gonna hold that against her. But you know, we got Miss Camille Davis on the show. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm appreciative of being here, and I can't wait to talk about this. Like, this means football is like really almost here. Like, that's what makes me excited.
Right. You know, you smell it all in the air. You see the
Mhm.
Mayo commercials. You know, Will Levis. You know, the Mayo commercial just dropped. For those that don't know, the Mayo perfume, but it is funny. But you know, just you see all the different, you know, personalities. You see all the players, the veteran players standing on the sideline, whooping it up for the young guys trying to make the team preseason. You know, which I did write something about on touring the AFC South wordpress.com, talking about the preseason. It isn't for wins and losses, by the way. Just a quick plug. But yeah, definitely fun times ahead. We're going to get into Green Bay, their off season, how the end of the season, and more in just a second. But in every episode, I open up the show with the Get Off Your Chest segment. And in this episode, I've got to talk about the Olympics. Now, we enjoyed the Olympics. We enjoyed seeing all the pageantry and all those different things. I was excited about one particular event, though, when we headed into it, when it got announced. I was like, okay, cool. That would be breakdancing. I
Mhm.
was excited about breakdancing. I was like, man, yes, we're gonna get to see the world's best. You know, I know Japan and China got some dancers out
Ye
there, and I'm ready to see them.
Yeah,
Well,
I was thinking the same thing. Once it was announced, I was like, "Man," to think about the fact that breaking has gone from just like the Bronx, being something that was done outside on cardboard to the Olympic stage, I was like, "This is super dope." But not all the performers were super dope, unfortunately.
yeah. Speaking of not dope performers, I'm gonna let y'all check out this one performer that I know you want to see.
They're looking like, "What is happening in front of me right now?"
Yeah, I watched in silence because I was just like, man, I just got to give a moment of silence for that performance right there. Ugh. Crazy legs, turbo and ozone did not go out there and break for this. That's all I can say. They did
She was
not
out
go
there
out there and break for
doing
this.
she was doing kangaroo hops and all kinds of stuff. She didn't eat like it just if that is all someone saw from the breaking at the Olympics, they would have a real problem. But like luckily, I hope people watched more of it because like the B-boys in particular, like they were killing it. So like she was bad for sure. Like that was I don't even know how she got on that stage, to be honest. Like that cannot be the best Australia has to send to the world. It can't be.
Well, we won't know next year because I don't think it'll be there. We'll have flag football. So, you know, that, I would say this: leave the breaking and all those different things to the actual B-boys and not the pretend ones that are teachers. Yes, I'm talking to you, Australia, directly to you. For those who don't know, she is actually a college professor that
Hmm.
wanted a free trip to Paris, in my opinion, and is not really entrenched in the culture. So, ma'am, I'm gonna need you go back home. Forget this even happened. We're trying to forget it now as we
Yeah.
watched.
It's
So,
going to live forever. I've already seen the dubs. You remember that old video? Like, this is hip hop with that one older lady, and she was like, "You got
oh
to do your head
Lord.
like, uh." They've already dubbed that over the break dancing and all that stuff. So like, she's going to have to live with that for a while. Like, you have your PhD and you have that paper, but also be this mean.
Ugh. I don't want to see that forever. Oh my God. And now in America, I want to say this. Please go to the Bronx. Please go to LA. I'm probably missing place. Go to Memphis, get some jokers.
Get
Just
something.
go get somebody. Just go to the streets. Be like, hey, I seen you doing the moves, whatever. You an Olympian this year. Just go do that. I don't need y'all to get these classically trained dancers to jump out here and try to do breaking. Nah, that
Right.
ain't how it worked. Turbo and
Right.
Ozone did not go to school for breaking. They learned how to do it and they just did it.
It's an instinct. Like it's
Right.
dance. Like you can study dance for sure, but like she even knew she didn't have the momentum and the power to do most of the break dancing moves. So she said, "I'm gonna use my creativity." Like, nah, sis, nah. Mm-mm.
I can't even call her sis. I'm gonna be like, ma'am,
You know what? You right.
ma'am.
You right, ma'am, lady.
Yes. Yes, exactly. She's in that category. She can't get to the cis category. She ain't made it quite there yet. But that's the get off your chest segment for this episode. Had to address that. I know plenty of y'all were thinking it. We just said it out loud. That's just what it is. But we're gonna move on to talk about the Green Bay Packers. Now, of course, they finished the season 9-8. Now, plenty don't remember that they started the season 3-6. Then went on a 6-2 run to make the playoffs, obliterated the Cowboys in Cowboy Stadium, which I'm pretty sure lots of fans love to see. But anyway, obliterated them in Cowboy Stadium before going on to lose to the 49ers in a kind of a sad fashion if you're a Green Bay Packers fan. So, but there was some good things that happened when it came to the season and came to the Green Bay Packers, because you had questions going into the year. The biggest question was Jordan Love. What is Jordan Love going to give us? What is he going to do? He's in the last year of his contract. Are they going to draft another quarterback next year? Well, in the 3-6 start, I'm pretty sure that Packers fans thought about it. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, at that time frame, they were asking Goody, and I apologize. There's lawn work happening outside if that is picking up on the mic, but Goody mentioned at that point, like, I'm not sure yet. Like, we're gonna have to continue to see. And that last half of the season, when Love was putting together, when that offensive line was putting together, the receivers were getting it all together. That offense just started to really click and understand things. In part two, because Matt LaFleur said, "Let me dial back some of the things in this offense. Let me take it a step back so that they can focus on what they need to focus on, and then we can build off that." And you saw a lot of growth come from this offense once they kind of dialed things back a bit.
Right. And part of that growth is, of course, like you mentioned, Jordan Love, 18 touchdown passes, 1 interception in his last 8 games. That boy was on fire.
Facts.
So, how impressed were you with his performance down the stretch with the amount of pressure that was on him?
I was really impressed because I came into the season not knowing what to expect. I mean, when the Packers drafted Jordan Love, my initial thought was like, there's no way like the Packers are going to get 3, quarterbacks back to back to back. Like, I understand as a Packers fan, so I've been watching the team for my entire life, of like being able to go from Brett Favre in like 92 to Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's a sustained time frame of greatness at the quarterback position. A lot of teams don't see that. So I was like, who knows what we get from Jordan Love? And I just came into the season kind of being like, I want to judge Jordan on his own merit. Like, that's it. I don't need him to be Aaron Rodgers. I don't need him to be Brett Favre. Be Jordan Love, and let's just see what this, turns out to be. And I honestly thought that the Packers could be a wild card team before the season started. At the beginning, I was like, maybe that was ambitious, but then they started putting it together, and you saw the arm talent. And I think that was one of the problems with Jordan Love earlier, because he does have the arm talent. And sometimes he would surpass the right there, like, this is the pass I should make, the easy one right here, and just test that arm strength. And it just didn't work out for him a lot of the time. So getting that discipline helped him out a lot. And also just the receivers get on the same page with him, them building that trust and that chemistry. It went a long way. So I came in thinking Packers could be wild card. Who knows what Jordan Love could be? And I just said, if he can just be average, because the reality of it is the 2022 season with Aaron Rodgers, his last one in Green Bay, he wasn't fantastic. He wasn't the Aaron Rodgers that we've seen. So I was like, if you can just give us that, like, the Packers should be okay. And Jordan Love gave us that and a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah, definitely did his thing. And, I definitely know that Packers fans are excited. Well, I know Black Packers fans are, because this is the first Black starting quarterback and consistent starting quarterback in team history. So yes, that is a Black history fact for those that don't know. I just gave you one. Thank you. All right. Now it's going on. The Green Bay defense. I would be crazy if I didn't mention the long-term quarterback there, because he did sign a 4-year, $220 million deal with a $75 million signing bonus.
Yep.
Big money, no whammies. So there's a little bit more pressure on them now. But we'll see what happens. Of course, there's pressure on the guys like Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow too. Mainly, I would say Trevor Lawrence because he kind of hasn't gone as deep in the playoffs as he's well. No. He has gone as deep in the
He had that
playoffs,
one
but
run.
he just hasn't been as consistent, I would say, as the other two quarterbacks that I just mentioned. I mean, and Jaguars fans can fight me on it all they want, but hey, that man is living the Vivian Green life, the emotional roller coaster on the football field.
And he can't get off.
That's right. We'll see if he can this year. But going on to the Green Bay defense, they didn't give up over 20 points, but twice in the 6-2 run. The secondary was what was most impressive. If I can talk today, a little tongue tied. But anyway, that was most impressive to me. I mean, you got Jair Alexander. You got, he was impressive except for, going out for the coin toss when coach didn't tell him to. Yeah. You had the Savage Life at safety, Darnell Savage. And then, you just had a secondary that got it done. What was most impressive to you just about that secondary and how they kind of like just flipped the switch and decided, hey, we're going to do this?
The thing with that Packers defense last year in particular is that, Joe Barry was the defensive coordinator, and Joe Barry's whole scheme and concept is that bend and don't break. Like, we're going to keep everything in front of us. We're not giving up any big plays. Like, that is the crux of what his defense was designed to do. And a problem that a lot of Packer fans were looking at, especially over especially over the beginning part of the season, was just the fact that the bending was bending too much. Like, it was breaking a lot more than what you would expect, especially the run defense. They're giving up big plays. I mean, we saw Baker Mayfield come into Lambeau Field and have a perfect passer rating. We saw the Packers go to the New York Giants and have Tommy DeVito carve them up. Like, that was an offensive line too. And with the Giants, that was like, they give up the most sacks. So we were all thinking like, this is going to be a feast for the Packers defense, and it wasn't that. So the Packers defense was inconsistent. So when they were on that streak to end the year, a lot of it was like, well, how much of this is going to last? Because we've seen this defense kind of heckle and hide it, where it's just like, sometimes we know what we're getting and sometimes it's not what it's supposed to be. So I think down the stretch, what you saw was the team being a little bit more aggressive, not playing off as far, which is something that the players were requesting from Joe Barry as well. And they were just able to get it done, really.
Okay. All right. I definitely, I'm looking forward to what the secondary is going to look like this year. Of course, we're going to get into that just a little later. But I would be remiss if I did not mention the wide receivers. Now, going into the season, Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson were the guys that everyone were talking about in terms of the wide receivers. However, two rookies decided, hey, we're going to join this party too. Mm-hmm. That would be Mr. Jaden. Is it Jaden or Jayon Reed?
Jaden.
Okay. I didn't want to butcher that man's name because, he has family and they might be listening and they might decide, hey, that guy messed up his name. We're going to remember that. But Jaden Reed stepped up, 793 yards, 8 touchdowns, which is huge for a rookie. And then, of course, you had Dontavion Wicks with 581 yards, 4 touchdowns. I know he's a Wahoo, so they happy down there. But he definitely did his thing. And he was a deep wide receiver core, a deep young wide receiver core. They did not have a 1,000-yard receiver. However, they had a bunch of weapons that were very, very effective. Didn't even throw in there. You got your tight end group there. But, just a lot of different weapons. I mean, what are your thoughts just on what this young wide receiver crew was able to achieve just going into this year? Your thoughts, you thought it'd be Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. However, Watson couldn't stay healthy. Romeo Doubs was a little inconsistent at times, and then he kind of pulled it together and kept going. But what was just your thought about this wide receiver core and how it came together?
I think it's what you saw or what you said in a roundabout way as well, with just how young they were. And you saw that a lot at the first half of the season where routes aren't being ran the right way. The depth isn't right. The chemistry's off, so on and so forth. I mean, going into last season, the vets in that wide receiver room was Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. And they were like in their second year. Like, that's a lot to ask for, saying like you're our vets with a year of experience under your belt, and everyone else, is these young guys, these rookies coming in. So there's a lot of growth that had to happen with that squad and with that position group. But what you saw is that over the course of the year, and Matt LaFleur is mentioning it at training camp this year, which is like there's no real number one wide receiver. Like people look at Christian Watson, and I get it because of the height and the speed combo with him, a very vital piece of the offense. But like there's no true number one receiver on this team, which actually makes, I think, planning for that Packers offense a little bit more difficult because there's not one person to key in on. One of my complaints with Aaron Rodgers towards the end was just like he had laser focus on Devontae Adams and Adams only. Like there could be other guys open, and he was going to throw it up to Devontae Adams, even if he had 2-3 guys around him. And it was like, there was an easier throw for you, Aaron. Like you should have just read this one, so on and so forth. But Jordan Love's going through that process of like, if you're open, the ball is coming your way. And that type of openness with the receivers where it's like, hey, there's no top dog right now, but all of them think they're the top dog at the same time. Like that level of competition within the position group, also the understanding of it helps them out so much. And like you mentioned too, the tight ends. I mean, Tyler Kraft was somebody who I didn't like training camp. I was like, I'm not sure about him, but Musgrave was the one where it's like, that's the rookie who's going to be the one to stretch the field. Musgrave gets hurt. Kraft comes in and he plays a really, really big role for this team. So like going into this year, really excited because we saw the growing pains last year. We saw them coming out of it. And now the question is like, well, how do you continue to build on that? And that's what gets me excited about this receiving core that the Packers have, because there's just so much youth, but talent there as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that continues to be developed.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There will be no, maybe, I got a theory on why maybe Aaron Rodgers was zoned in on Devontae Adams. Maybe he was an undercover fan of Jodeci, Devontae Jodeci, But, just saying, getting back to the team, yeah, definitely a young team in terms of the wide receiver core. And, it's going to be just interesting to see the development and the growth if they're going to have the sophomore slumps, those different things as well. Because, of course, Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson had their sophomore slumps, and these two may have them as well. But there is more talent that did get added to this team, especially in the wide receiver core, especially just in general in the free agency. We're going to get into that and more right after this commercial break on Touring the AFC South.
EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash are two of the best beard grooming products for men worldwide. They help promote growth, keep your beard moisturized and soft, and enhance your overall upkeep of your facial hair. And with the new promo code MPAFC10, you can get 10% off of these products. Just go to www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. Again, that's www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. And again, the promo code MPAFC10. Again, MPAFC10, where you can get 10% off any products except for beard boxes. So treat your beard better today by going to get the EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash.
All right, we are back on Touring AFC South. Like I mentioned before, the commercial break. We're going to talk about the additions to this team in free agency and the draft. Now, of course, in free agency, it was a couple people that got added that, it was a couple splash people that got added, but I'm not going to tell you about them. I'm just going to ask. We have our Green Bay expert on the show, Camille Davis. She is going to kind of go into those a little more. I'm going to leave that alone.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask, which free agent signing surprised you the most in terms of, a good signing for this team?
The surprise signing to me was Josh Jacobs, where it was like, oh, that's what we went, especially because there was a moment where it seemed as if the Packers were going to have Jacobs and Aaron Jones, which was like, oh my gosh, they're going to have the best running back 1-2 punch in the league. And then everything kept unfolding and you realize, oh, the Packers aren't keeping Aaron Jones. They're actually going to be pivoting to Josh Jacobs as that lead back. So that was like a bittersweet moment because Aaron Jones has been one of the best running backs in Green Bay Packer history. Even with some of the injuries that he's had, just when he got on the field, he really tilted it for the Packers, especially with having a young quarterback. A young quarterback's best friend is going to be a great running back, and Aaron Jones was that. So to get Jacobs in was definitely a surprise for me, but a pleasant one of like, if we can't have Aaron Jones, this is a nice way to pivot, assuming that a lot of what you saw last year was in part due to just the state that the Raiders were in when it comes to Jacobs and his numbers. But the biggest free agent signing was Xavier McKinney, getting that safety with the new defensive coordinator coming in, with Jeff Hafley coming in, taking over. He's switching the Packers defense from a 3-4 to a 4-3. And the way that Hafley wants to play it, his safety is going to be the most important piece because there is so much control that comes from that, because he loves the one high looks. So you need a safety that can do a bit of everything. He loves versatility as well. So being able to have somebody like McKinney come in where it's like, okay, you can play up top, you can play in the box, we can rotate you out to nickel every so often. Like, we can just move you around. And he also has the IQ to be able to move those other defensive pieces around. So those are the big two, I would say, for the Packers. But I think that going on that defensive side with McKinney, like, that's probably the biggest one because of how important he's going to be to this new defense as well.
Yeah, definitely McKinney. That would surprise a lot of people that, one, Green Bay was going after a free agent.
Right.
Usually Green Bay, they usually groom their people and reassign them or stuff like that. They usually don't go out and sign people. Now, I still remember when they got the Smith brothers. That was a nice one, but they aren't really brothers, but they are brothers, but they just not brothers. But they got those signings. I was like, okay, then cool. They kind of bucked the trend. They're kind of continuing to do so. I get a little bit more over the years now, which I find quite interesting. And, it's going to be interesting when they actually try to do this as a wide receiver at one point. I know they are, but I just wonder when it's going to happen because they bucked the trend now with getting a running back. So, okay, we'll see what happens. But what was the biggest free agent loss for the Green Bay Packers? I mean, I think it might be Mr. Savage Life himself, but
I think we're going to see the thing with the safety room last year is that before the season started, I'm looking at the defense and I'm like, man, I like our defensive line. I'm cool with the linebackers, the corners. The safety group was the biggest question mark for me, where it was just like, we don't have too much next to Savage to really work with here. And they were rotating a lot of different guys in. But I honestly think that they're going to be okay. I know we're going to talk about some of the draftees coming up, so I won't spoil it yet. So I wouldn't say that the biggest loss is Savage, but it's honestly probably one of those linemen that they lost, because they lost John Runyon Jr., who was the starting right guard for the team. And we know how important offensive line is for any team, especially when you're protecting the highest paid quarterback in the league now. So the big question for the Packers has just been like, who is going to fill that gap on that right side of the line, protecting Jordan Love? And through the draft, here comes Jordan Morgan, you know what I'm saying? And he's someone who projected to be in that, but there was also Sean Ryan, who was rotating in and out in the right guard position last year, which was odd, but something the Packers were doing, where it's like, this possession, it's Sean Ryan, this possession, it's Runyon. Like, they were doing that for a second there. So I think that's a really big one for them. And also just sentimentally, losing David Bakhtiari, even though he didn't play last year, when he's healthy, one of the best left tackles in the league. So him not being there is going to be different, just given how big of a part of the Packers that he was.
Yeah, definitely. I will say this. I have talked about this to Jacksonville people. It's funny that Darnell Savage was a safety for the Green Bay Packers, and he's going to be a nickelback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I keep going back to this one, and then of course, they were talking about a young guy they were going to throw in at safety, and then now they bring in these veterans as well. So I'm like, okay, so what's really going on? They maybe not as high on this young guy as they thought. It's just quite interesting trying to figure out their secondary, because I mean, they still have to figure out who's going to be the corner opposite of Tyson Campbell. But of course, I'm gonna mention that just a little bit when we talk about Jacksonville versus Green Bay, because boy, oh boy, I have some thoughts there as well as the other teams in the AFC South. But we got to get into these draft picks. Of course, I'm going to go down the board on all the draft picks just to give everyone a rundown of who Green Bay drafted this year. In the first round, Jordan Morgan, offensive tackle, Arizona. In the second round, Adrian Cooper, linebacker, Texas A&M, as well as safety Javon Bullard from Georgia. Third round, Marshawn Lloyd, running back, USC, Hopper, linebacker from Missouri. The fourth round, Evan Williams, safety, Oregon. Fifth round, they got Jacob Monk, center, Duke, as well as Keaton Oladapo, safety, Oregon State. Of course, sixth round, Travis Glover, offensive tackle, Georgia State. In the seventh round, they got Michael Pratt, QB, Tulane, and Kalen King, cornerback from Penn State. All right, which draft pick? I gotta ask, which draft pick are you most excited about? I think I know which one you're gonna pick, but go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Is it Evan Williams? Was that what you were expecting me to say there?
Oh no, I wasn't. I wasn't expecting you to say that one, but go ahead.
That's the one. It's been Evan Williams and Javon Bullard that are really rotating as that second safety next to McKinney. And Evan Williams has been fantastic throughout training camp. Last I checked, he was tied for the team high interceptions in practice with cornerback Eric Stokes. And then you get the preseason game where at halftime, you're getting interviews with Matt LaFleur talking about, like, we need the defense I want to see a turnover happen. Like, we need to get the ball, so on and so forth. And then boom, here comes Evan Williams out to start the second half, forcing a fumble, getting the ball back to Green Bay. He's just been really fantastic no matter where you line him up at. And it's been impressive, which is why I'm like thinking about the safety room last year and the safety room this year. It's a lot younger around McKinney, but when you have a stud like that, and hearing that Javon Bullard showing out in camp, Evan Williams is showing out in camp, and then Anthony Johnson Jr., who was on the team last year, he's showing out in camp. So you're just like, I love to hear the level of competition at this position. And Evan is somebody who's been top of the list consistently throughout camp. So at this point, he is definitely who I'm most excited about.
Okay, and of course, we do have to do the flip side of this. Which draft pick has perplexed you?
It's a great question, because I think the Packers actually had a really good draft class. Again, they had like 11 picks, I think it was, for this particular class. So I would guess the one that perplexed me, and it's not for the reason that you probably think, was Kalen King being our last pick in the 7th round. Not because they picked King, just how far King's draft stock fell. He was somebody who was projected to be a first-round draft pick in that 2024 draft, and things just did not go his way during that last year. So for him to be able to fall that far in the draft, come to the Packers at the 7th round draft pick, their last draft pick, that was a surprise to me. But right now in camp, like, I'm hearing some good things out of him in that nickel position as well. So the competition is good. So like, that was a surprise to me that he was even there, that he got to that point in the draft. But we know how quickly things can change in a year when it comes to projecting who's going to go at the top of a draft.
Right. Things can change at the drop of a dime. Yes, definitely. And of course, the free agents can make the team as well. Are there any free agents or free agent pickups that you're kind of keen on or hearing some things about that may, do some things this year or not? If not, that's okay. But if you have any, sure, I'd love to hear about them.
I got one that's more of a question for you. Okay. I mentioned the offensive line with the Green Bay Packers and everything like that. There's some movement going on. They're trying to find their right guard. They're also trying to find their swing tackle, that first guy off the bench in case anything happens. And one of their free agent pickups was Andre Dillard, who was with the Titans last year. Benched, if I remember correctly, partway through the season. And he is somebody who's been competing for that swing tackle role for the Packers. So I wanted to get your opinion on the play of Andre Dillard, because he's looked all right. He had a slow start to camp, but since then he's been decent. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on him.
Okay, here are my thoughts. And not saying that I don't like Andre Dillard as a person. I just want to say that up front.
All on field.
He does not need to be playing tackle. I saw this many times. Anytime you have Myles Garrett out there moving side to side, and you have a tight end shadowing where he's going to be, that's a problem. Andre Dillard got tips after the game from Myles Garrett about things he could work on to do better at offensive tackle. When a defensive player is doing that after the game, as there, I mean, I know that it probably happens a lot, but after that type of performance, yikes. So to me, he fits more as a guard than he does as a tackle. He fit better in Philadelphia when he was that way.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think he's more of a guard than a tackle. And if he has to line up at tackle, get ready to put some help out there, get ready to have a running back chip, all those different things, because he's not necessarily the power player that people may think he is. Because if it's his size, you would think he would.
Exactly.
He's not necessarily a power player. So he's more of a guy, I would say, is more of a guard than he is a tackle at this point in his career. And, if he's battling for the swing tackle position and he wins that, I'm going to do a silent prayer if he has to go in one of those tackle spots. Because, boy, I mean, I hope he has gotten better and improved, but I don't think he's an offensive tackle. I think he's an offensive guard, and that's where I think he'd be best at.
That makes some sense. I mean, the Packers are known for taking tackles and moving them. They pride versatility on their offensive line. I mean, they drafted Jordan Morgan in the first round, who was a tackle. And when they announced him, they're like, nope, just a lineman. And now he's sitting here playing a guard position. So who knows? But right now, Dillard has been running right tackle because Zach Tom has been injured, and he's in competition with two other linemen for the most part, trying to get that swing tackle role. So I'll keep an eye on it and definitely let you know when they make that decision, just so I can get those additional prayers, because we might need it, it sounds like.
Oh, boy. All I can say is, oh, boy. Jordan Love, please have that sixth sense when you back there if he's in. But we're going to take a quick commercial break again, and then when we come back, we're going to get into these matchups. We're going to run through those pretty quickly, and then we'll have our fun segment, 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back on Touring the AFC South. And like I mentioned, we're going to get into these matchups. Of course, the NFC North is going against the AFC South this year, which makes for some pretty interesting competitions. You got the Texans.
Can't wait.
Pretty much the team in this division that everyone is talking about, the AFC South. But we're not going to talk about them just yet. We're going to save them for last. We're going to start out. If I could talk, good gracious. I guess I didn't have my water, my tea, something this morning, and it's just telling me, hey, you got to slow down. But we're going to start out with the Tennessee Titans. Now, of course, everyone knew them and their identity as being a physical team that runs the football a lot with Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is not their identity anymore. Derrick Henry is going to Baltimore, and now we've got a few additions here in terms of Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. Tony Pollard was of course, the Dallas Cowboys last year. Tajay Spears is the young running back that got drafted last year. Of course, you have Calvin Ridley. You got Tyler Boyd. You got Hopkins, a wide receiver that was here last year as well. And then, of course, it's a pass-first offense, so you did have to upgrade the line. You got Lloyd Cushenberry, brought him over from Denver at center, and then you have J.C. Latham they drafted in the first round from Alabama. So, I had to do it like Eli Gold does it, on the air. But so as far as this change of offense and philosophy, how do you think the Pack are going to kind of approach this type of philosophy change, being that they faced the Titans a few times over the years, and basically been a team that just ran the football right at the Packers and then went up top every now and again. I mean, I remember the Traylon Burks catch from a couple years ago. But so how do you think they're going to kind of handle this philosophy change?
Well, listen, if last year was any indication, the Packers are thankful to not have to go against a dominant running back, because running backs have been a problem for that Packers defense for a while, which again is a hope that with the new defensive coordinator coming in, because a lot of the same pieces on this defensive side of the ball, especially up front. So it's not much change there outside of the fact of how they're attacking those gaps. So the Titans actually being more of a pass preference team at this point probably fits a little bit better into what the Packers are hoping to do, given the fact they have Jair Alexander out there on one side, and Eric Stokes is apparently finally healthy again because he had a great rookie year. And he started off his sophomore year okay, but then he got hurt, and he's been battling injuries ever since that point. Tried to play through a little bit last year when he came back and re-aggravated a hamstring. So this is the season where it's like the Packers seem to be really confident in what Eric Stokes has been doing. He's been having a great camp as well. Plus the safeties in the back that we have on the team, as I mentioned before. Like, I feel pretty decent about that matchup defensively against that offense, especially without Derrick Henry just causing havoc all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Now, I will say this, defensively for the Titans last year, it was a little bit of a mess, especially when third downs, because, you had corners that were like 8 yards off the ball and 3rd and 5, things like that.
Like Joe Barry.
But Denard Wilson is the new defensive coordinator. They brought him over from Baltimore. He was actually the secondary coach. And along with that, they brought over L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie as well. Those are the top 2 corners. Awuzie is currently nursing injury right now, but he should be ready for the regular season, as what they've kind of indicated. So they're not just easy pickings anymore. So with those 2 guys, 2 veteran guys, and 2 pretty good corners, does that pose a little bit of an interesting dynamic for a Green Bay team that does love to get the ball out and down the field?
It sure does. Like, I can't come on here and be like, nah, they good. Like, no.
I'm sorry. I didn't mention Quandre Diggs actually is at safety now, too, along with Jamal Adams, along with Amani Hooker, who has been known to lock up a few tight ends every now and again.
Hey, listen.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's a challenge. Like, you can't look at that like what they've made, the changes on their defense, and be like, oh, no, we good regardless. Like, no, you got to respect that. But I think that comes into play as well with the Packers of not having that number 1 wide receiver, so to speak, and we're going to line guys up in different places. If you press and you get beat and there's only 1 deep, like that ball is probably going to go up. Like, it's going to be a go route to Christian Watson ASAP because of the height and speed combination. And then you have somebody like Dontavian Wicks, who might be the 4th wide receiver on this team, but the route running is just so smooth for him to be that young already. So like if it's a situation where you're matching your top guys up against, Watson and Dobbs and Reed, and then you bring a safety down to cover like Musgrave or something, and then there's Wicks in the slot or something like that, and you bring a safety down, that's a matchup that the Packers are going to look at and still be like, that looks good to us. Or in addition to that, using Josh Jacobs in the pass game as well, just trying to get the ball in his hands in different ways. And when you have a running back that can catch the ball well out the backfield, it also helps out as well. So I think it's going to be a great battle between these 2 teams, defensively and offensively, on both sides of the ball. So looking forward to that matchup. But I think the Packers wide receivers are going to be amped up for that particular matchup, especially since it's so early on in the season as well.
Right. Now I've got a question for you. You're speaking of offensively and defensively a battle. Which battle are you most interested in watching? Will Levis versus the Packers secondary, or Jeffrey Simmons versus? Oh, I'm sorry, Jeffrey Simmons. I got to throw T'Vondre Sweat in there versus the Packers offensive line.
Simmons and Sweat against that offensive line for sure. That's on offense where I have the most questions still, is like, what does this offensive line look like? And what is those rotations looking like? Was Rasheed Walker last year? Was that a blip? Or is he really going to be a solid left tackle for this team going forward? Because over the offseason, you were hearing they wanted to have competition at that position as well. So, yeah, that's the matchup for me that I'm like, I got to keep an eye on that one because it could go either way.
Yeah. Definitely with the Mayo Messiah, it could go either way too. Now, for those that don't know, I kind of gave Will Levis that nickname in terms of the Mayo Messiah, and pretty sure everyone saw his Mayo commercial that just got released. But yeah, it'll be interesting seeing him going against Jair Alexander and all those guys, especially with the additional weapons. And the guy to watch to me is Chig as tight end for the Titans. He does get open. He has speed and size, and he kind of reminds you of a combination between Delaney Walker and what is my guy that was here for after Delaney. Anyway, he kind of reminds you a little bit of Delaney in terms of getting open, things like that. Jonnu Smith, that's who it is. He kind of reminds you of a combination between Delaney and Jonnu Smith, having size and speed and toughness. So, if he can kind of secure the dropsies that he has, because he drops one big play every game that while he's open, he drops it, but he's gonna make up for it because he's gonna catch a pass and it's gonna be a short pass, but he's gonna really like stiff arm or break a tackle or something. He runs like it is his last run every single time he catches the ball. So I would say that's going to be interesting just to see him as well. Moving on, we got to go on to the Jaguars, and I have a big question about Mr. Trevor Lawrence. Now, Trevor Lawrence got paid this offseason.
Big paid.
He got paid. Yeah, he got paid. His average salary is tops in the league, tied with Joe Burrow and, of course, Jordan Love. He has weapons like Christian Kirk. He had Gabe Davis they brought in from the Buffalo Bills. They drafted rookie Brian Thomas Jr. out of Alabama, LSU in the first round. Does he, with these weapons, of course, Travis Etienne running back as well, you got to mention him, and Evan Ingram, you can't forget, he was their receptions leader and one of the top tight ends in the NFL last year. With all these weapons, does Trevor Lawrence scare you this season?
No. Scare is the wrong. There. To be fair, though, to Trevor Lawrence, I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I'm saying is that there aren't many quarterbacks where I see them and I'm like, oh, I'm terrified. Like there's only a handful of those guys in the league, in my opinion, when you're matched up against them, like a Pat Mahomes or even a Lamar Jackson because of the leg speed as well, where it's just like, and the Packers have always historically had problems with running quarterbacks. So like when I see, Jackson, I'm like, that's going to be a problem. But Trevor Lawrence is one that he doesn't put fear into my heart, but you have to respect him. You know what I mean? Like you can't overlook him at all. It reminds me a bit of like a Matthew Stafford or even like a Jared Goff in at Detroit now, where it's like, if you give Jared Goff time, he's going to carve you up. So like, if you can't get that pressure on him, it might be a long night for you. So like, you can't take him lightly. So that's how I feel about Trevor Lawrence as well. Like hopefully the Packers defensive line can make things uncomfortable for him, keep him in that pocket, and get some sacks, or at the very least, just cause the passes that he does get off to be errant, and give our defensive backs a chance to get those.
Okay. All right. Now, speaking of, scaring and things like that, there's a combination on the opposite side of the Jacksonville Jaguars team defense. Scary. That's Mr. Josh Hines Allen. Now, people, he's not Josh Allen. He's not the other Josh Allen anymore. He is Josh Hines Allen. We will call him as such to respect his wishes. Fact. And you have Trayvon Walker. Both of those guys had double digits in sacks, with Hines Allen having 17.5 sacks and Trayvon Walker having 10 sacks. There are a couple of bullies out there on the edges. Now, you mentioned Andre Dillard potentially having to step into some games. I don't think you want him to step into this one.
No. Nope.
So how much do these two scare you as a combination?
That's more fear than what Trevor Lawrence poses, in my opinion, because again, when you have dominant edge rushers and the game is at the line of scrimmage, as you know. So like when one team can control that line of scrimmage, it writes the script for the game for the most part. So that's something that I'm looking at against in this matchup where I'm like, oof, if the Packers don't get that right, it's going to be a really long day for Green Bay. So that might be a situation where they do need that tight end to come in and help, where they need that running back to be back there to help chip. And also for Jordan Love to get the ball out of his hands quickly. Like you're going to have to make sure you're making the right reads there. So yeah, a little bit of fear for those defensive edge rushers for sure.
All right, and the last one I got for you. Which one are you most interested in watching? Christian Kirk, who is their best wide receiver, the Jacksonville Jaguars' best wide receiver, versus Jair Alexander, the best cornerback for the Packers? Or are you interested in watching how the Packers' depth at wide receiver goes to work against Tyson Campbell? Of course, you have Darnell Savage in the slot. You have question marks at everywhere else in terms of who's going to be that corner opposite, who's going to be the starting safety, because Antonio Johnson is the guy that they pegged at first. Then they brought in Gibson, and Gibson's got a 6-game suspension to start the season as well, and they have Edmonds as well, who, if he makes the team, could potentially be in there. So which one are you more interested in watching, the cat and mouse game between Kirk and Alexander, or the Packers depth versus the Jaguars questions in the secondary?
I think it's that Kirk and Alexander matchup, because I'm also curious to see as well if that's somebody who Ja will follow around the field, or if it's just going to be based on what side of the field that they're on. Because Ja loves the chance to be able to match up one-on-one and follow guys. He loves taking that challenge on. And that's something that Joe Barry did not like to do much last year. So again, with this defense, we still have questions on how things are going to be ran, what it's going to look like, because it's a whole new scheme, a whole new coordinator. So that's the one I would probably lean towards in this particular matchup.
Okay. All right. Moving on next, the Colts. Anthony Richardson is a tight end size QB with a rocket arm and speed like a wide receiver. How much does that make you nervous as a Green Bay Packers fan with that type of weapon at quarterback? Now, he is raw still. He still hasn't quite figured everything out, but still, he's a bad man.
It's like I said, if you give me a quarterback that can scramble against the Packers, I'm going to have some concerns. And you mentioned his size. Like, he's a tight end and a quarterback body, like you said. But the thing that gives me some hope, I would say, for the matchup against the Packers is just the fact that it's coming really, really early on in the season. I believe that's the week 2 game, and it's in Green Bay. So one thing about that is he didn't have much playing time last season because of the injury. He's coming back. He had his first was like over 300 days for like in between his last snap and this preseason one that he just had. So one thing on the Packers side is, to your point, he's still raw and learning, and we get him early on in the season, not later on when he might have been able to figure some more things out. So that's the one thing to consider on the Packers side for this matchup against the Colts.
Definitely. It's going to be something to watch, as well as watching JT, Jonathan Taylor,
Wisconsin,
who I believe is the best back in the AFC South. But to me, it's going to be interesting to watch him versus the Packers run game. Now, the Packers run game, they were good in the past. They weren't so good against the run. Yeah, so seeing JT and seeing Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly and those guys, that has to be a high level of concern for this Packers defense.
Absolutely can't front on that one. But again, so all of my hope when it comes to Packers defense is thinking new scheme, new coordinator, using guys in ways that actually fit their skill sets a bit better. And one of the things that I do love about that 4-3 defense is the fact that the pass rushers, that defensive line, they don't have to spend too much time thinking and like, which gap should I attack based on what I'm seeing in front of me? I know this is my assignment. I'm hitting this gap as hard as I can, and I'm going for it. So that's one piece of it for the Packers defense that gives me some hope. In addition to hope that like a Lucas Van Ness takes that second-year jump as a edge rusher for the Packers. His size and speed combination is utterly ridiculous. We'd call Van Ness Hercules up here. So hopefully when Hercules rotates in, when he's giving Preston Smith a breather or Rashawn Gary a breather, he can come in and make some noise. And plus, you hope that Kenny Clark and TJ Slayton up front in the middle of that line can really hold serve. So it's going to be a test, an early test for that Packers defense for sure. I mean, they see them after opening the season up against the Eagles. So that's going to be tough seeing Saquon and then going and seeing JT the very next week.
Okay. Yeah. It'll be quite fun. Quite fun to see how that works out. Another thing that'd be quite fun to watch is Mr. Zaire Franklin. He led the AFC in tackles last year. How do you account for just that kind of playmaking machine in the middle of the field? Everybody thought Shaq Leonard would leave and the defense would take some steps back. No, Zaire Franklin said not on his watch. So
Hey, got to identify him. Make sure you know where he is at all times. And again, don't try to get too cute. Take what's in front of you, make the right play, and don't try to force it. That's really all you can do. You have to play some flawless football. You have to play some smart football. Read the field and take what's in front of you.
yeah, definitely. You do have EJ Speed out there too. That's another guy to watch out for. So they just I guess they just grooming linebackers.
That's what it seemed like
in Indianapolis, and of course they are playing under Gus Bradley, who was the defensive coordinator, where he came to fame, was defensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks back in the Legion of Boom days, and he does have a big corner in Juju Brents, which that's going to be interesting to watch how he develops. He's a big 6'3" corner. Reminds you of I would say size-wise reminds you of Richard Sherman. I wouldn't say he is Richard Sherman, no. But
I'm sure the hope is that he turns into a Richard Sherman. Though.
That's definitely what Colts fans are hoping for sure, because they don't know what's going to be going on that opposite side either. So they're kind of in the same boat that Jacksonville's in, pretty much. Except for they didn't draft a corner and two corners like Jacksonville did. Jacksonville drafted Jerry Jones and DeAndre Prince, which I believe DeAndre Prince. When I saw DeAndre Prince got drafted to the Jaguars, I was like, oh yeah, that's the guy. But Jaguar fans were looking at me like Jerry Prince is a solid guy. I'm like, look, I saw this guy play in the SEC. DeAndre Prince, basically, he's out there trying to do some things, and he was trying to do a little too much sometimes. And I think that's where he got himself in trouble at times. Plus I used to play defensive back in college, so. Definitely know things to look for. And I was like, yeah, Prince will be the guy. And who's showing up in camp now? Who's competing for that starting job? That would be Mr. Prince. Mm-hmm. Now Jones is definitely doing his thing, but Prince is definitely a guy that they're excited about.
I'm going to have to keep an eye on him during that matchup then.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Hopefully my words ring true and he come out there and do his thing and he get that position. But, we got to go on to
the Packers, though. Not too true against the Packers, though.
I hear you there. You said good against everybody else, but
yeah. Have a mid game that week.
All right. Last but certainly not least, we got the Houston Texans. Now, of course, CJ Stroud was incredible last year. 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Hard guy to rattle. How do you kind of shake or rattle Mr. CJ Stroud if you're the Packers?
You hope that defensive line can get through. That's where it starts with that particular matchup, is just trying to get through and rush him. Make sure he doesn't have time to get those throws off. And if you do flush him out the pocket, make sure you're able to contain him once he gets outside of it. So CJ Stroud is really, really talented. And that's probably, of all of the AFC South matchups, like that's the one where I'm like very excited about seeing, especially because that game is in Lambeau, although it would have been fun to have a reason to go down to Houston for a game. But listen, that's going to be a fun one. He is going to be really difficult. He's going to really test a lot of the Packers, especially now that Diggs is down there as well.
Yeah, you mentioned it. You got Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell's back from an injury. You got Dalton Schultz. You got Brevin Jordan. You can't forget about him. You got Joe Mixon. I mean, the Texans got weapons.
Loaded.
How do you defend all of that if you're Green Bay?
You stay assignment sure. Like a lot of it, the answers sound like similar, but it that's what football comes down to. Like you're going to have to win at the line of scrimmage. You're going to have to try to fluster Stroud as much as you can. And on the back end, make sure that you are assignment sure. You got to be talking. You have to make sure your communication and that you're tight with that. I'll be really curious to see, again, if that situation where they put Ja on Diggs and they're like, you just follow him around. Like just go where Diggs goes, which is something that he's not unfamiliar with, given the fact that, a few years here when he's in Minnesota, you saw that matchup. So that's going to be one to really monitor. And of course, too, with that many weapons on offense at the skill positions, your safeties are going to have to play a big role in that as well, because they're going to have to pick up some coverages. And I'll be curious to see as well how much Jeff Hafley mixes up who is where, trying to confuse Stroud as much as he possibly can, as well as what I would think would be on the game plan against them.
Now, of course, flipping on the other side, Derek Stingley Jr. is good. But on the other side, you have potentially a rookie starting, Kamari Lassiter, the rookie out of Georgia, which, of course, y'all have Georgia guy at safety. The Houston Texans have a Georgia guy at cornerback. Now, Kamari Lassiter could be the starter, and for all indications, he's definitely doing well in camp and, basically nail down the position. Or you could have the option of 2 former first-round picks, one of them, which I'm pretty sure you're familiar with. Mr. Jeff Okudah is actually there, former Detroit, former Atlanta Falcon. He's there, and also C.J. Henderson, former Jaguar, former Panther, is there. One of those guys could potentially make the team, and not only make the team, could potentially be in that position or a nickel position. Now, do you think that's something that you definitely would attack if one of those guys step on the field as a starting corner? I mean, I would be looking at them like, okay, cool. This is barbecue chicken right here potentially. I mean, what is that kind of your thoughts when you think about the careers of these guys and how they played so far, as opposed to what a rookie is? And if you're going to test that rookie, him potentially being barbecue chicken as well?
You got to test the rookie. Like, you just have to see, like, let's just see how this works out. And then also just try to move guys around. So I'm not super familiar with how their corners if they travel, or if they're more so like, we're going to play a side and then you play a side and we're going to go from there. Because if that's the case, I expect the Packers to be just moving guys all around and trying to get the most favorable matchups that they possibly can. So, and again, too, Josh Jacobs out the backfield, using him in that passing game as well, I think could be really big against the Texans.
Okay. All right. It's going to be interesting, as well as looking at just the movement around. And of course, D'Amico Ryans is the defensive coordinator as well as the head coach. So he probably will be moving Stingley around just a little bit more, since he's probably a little bit more comfortable with the system this year. It's going to be interesting just to see not Danico Autry, but Jalen Petrie and how he does in the second year of a D'Amico Ryans defense. Didn't do so well the second year. He's a talented guy, not necessarily a guy that comes up and likes to hit people, which that's part of Danico.
Part of football.
D'Amico Ryans' defenses. So he likes to be physical, and Jalen ain't necessarily the most physical guy. Now, I'm not to say he can't be, but you're saying he's not necessarily he ain't necessarily the most physical guy. But last thing I want to mention is Danico Autry's first game will be against the Green Bay Packers. Now, I will say that with him, he is a super versatile defensive lineman. He's out the first 6 games, suspension, violating taking something he wasn't supposed to take, a dietary supplement or something that was on the list or whatever that may be. No, Danico, talked to Danico, really quiet guy, really good guy. So, I'm not down at Danico. I know probably it's just a mistake he made in terms of maybe something was on the list that he didn't know maybe was on the list. But he's a very versatile defensive lineman, which he's going to bring that versatility to this defensive line when he comes back, because he can line up outside defensive end. He can line up inside. He can line up with his hand off the ground. He can do all these different things. So with him coming back and potentially the Texans, kind of on the move already, does that, I know your offensive line and you have some questions there, especially if, Andre Diller's at one of the offensive tackles, but does that kind of versatility scare you more than maybe a Danielle Hunter and a Will Anderson potentially on one side or the other?
Yeah, when you can move a guy inside and have him rush from the edge, like that changes the matchups considerably. So, and on top of that too, that's going to be his first game back, meaning he is going to be fresh. Meanwhile, everyone else on that field is going to be banged up from have played, the first 6-7 weeks of the season. So the fresh legs aspect of it is a huge part of it as well, because I heard this said a couple years ago by one of my co-hosts on Tech File, and they were like, football injuries are a feature. They're not a bug. Like it's going to happen. Your body is going to wear down as the season comes on. So having a fresh edge rusher, that's going to be tough at that point in the season.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say Danico is a guy that definitely did some things. He's not the fastest guy, but the handwork is amazing. And the twitch, you just don't expect it for a guy his size. And when you see it, you're like, okay, wow, I didn't know he had that in him. Now he is in his almost to his mid-30s. So that's an interesting part of it as well. But the guy still can make plays. But we have went through every one of the AFC South matchups with the Green Bay Packers, talked about the free agency, and also talked about the end of their season. But of course, we cannot end the show just talking football. We gotta have a little fun.
Let's
We got
go.
5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. Are you ready?
I'm ready to go.
All right. You got 1 comedy show to attend. Are you going to Martin Lawrence's or are you going to Chris Rock's?
I've seen them both as well. Right now, I'm going Martin.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna have to go Chris Rock because he has some funny comedy specials.
He does.
Okay, you've got 1 concert to go to. Are you going to Beyonce's concert or Rihanna's?
Why you do this to me? Why you do it to me? Ooh, does Rihanna's concert come with new music? Because if so, that's the answer. But as is, I think I might actually lean Beyonce just because of how deep the catalog is.
Got you. Okay. All right, you got cheer for one team for one day. Is it the Bears or the Vikings?
Can I just not watch football that day?
Oh, I gotta go to the judges.
Gotta
Let me
pick
go to the
one?
judges.
I can't
Judges
do
say
the
you gotta
Bears.
pick one.
It has to be the Vikings. It has to be. I cannot cheer for the Bears.
Okay. All right. Let's see. As a GM, you have a chance to trade for Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. Which one are you trading for?
Jaylen Brown. That's a no-brainer one for me.
All right. Okay. All right. You had a long day of work. Are you picking a comedy or action movie at the end of that day?
Let's go with an action movie. Let's blow some things up.
All right. Well, that is the end of 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. Camille Davis, thank you for coming on the show. I want to kind of give you the platform or your space to actually talk about what all you have going on. I know you got something new you're working on now. It's very unique. And then also, of course, where everyone can find you on social media. Oh, by the way, I did try to get like some Cuckoo Cow into the show, but I just couldn't quite figure it out how to get him into the show. I was looking for the music and everything, couldn't quite figure it out how to get him in the show. But I did want to say Cuckoo Cow is from Wisconsin, by the way. Milwaukee. Yeah, I remember in my projects. Remember that song?
And he was in the hood filming the videos too. Good times. Shout out to JP. If we talking real quick, Milwaukee rap. Shout out to JP and Bad Biddy. Okay. But my pups. So if you want to find me talking more football, you can catch me every Monday right now on the Pack a Day podcast, talking Green Bay Packers news, of course. In addition to that, I have a Technical Foul podcast, TECKNICAL. And on that show, we talk NFL, NBA, and pro wrestling. Those are our 3 main tenets on that show. And then if you're a basketball fan, I do Locked On Bucks Monday through Friday during the season. Right now it's off season, so we're down to 3 shows a week. And we'll be back to that 5-show-a-week format in mid-September. So right now that's where you can find me. I might have some stuff coming with Cheesehead TV, but we're still working out the details on that for some more Packers news.
Now we got the 10-second one too. The
10-second news show. Something my friends are crazy. So I was like, let's just do some skits real quick. So 10-second news shows on Instagram. Just as it says, it's a quick 10-second news show. And my friends were able to get me on there as a sports correspondent. So that's been fun.
Yeah, that was interesting. I was watching that. I was like, oh, okay, how they gonna get all this in 10 seconds? I'm over here trying to think it out and all type of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do 10 seconds. I tried, I thought about it, and I was like, nah. So it takes a special talent to get everything in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. That special talent is you. So thank you for coming on the show. Tell everyone where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for having me. I know we've been social media friends and following each other and supporting each other's work. So it's really dope to get a chance to come on here on the pod and actually chop it up with you. But for others who want to follow me on social media, you can catch me at Camille Monet, CAMILLEMONAE on Twitter, Instagram, and these PSN streets if you're trying to get that work in NBA 2K or anything like that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay. All right. Nah, I'm definitely not a video game player. I probably don't even hardly have the time, but but as far as if anyone doesn't know who I am, I'm the host of Touring the AFC South. My name is Mike Patton. You can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter, word to Prince, at Mike Patton 82. That's MikePatton 82. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. And of course, you can find Touring the AFC South on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it. We are there. And you can also find Touring the AFC South on the Mike Patton Network on YouTube. I want to thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. We're out. Peace.